We are so excited to have you all here on the Powerhouses of the global corporate stage. And I am so excited about this guest today. She is truly a powerhouse. As you all know, a powerhouse is someone who is dynamic, effective, and unstoppable in achieving success. And when you hear her story, you will recognize why she is a guest. A little bit about this powerhouse. She personally, you all gave me the kudos about winning the business pitch. I have to say that her insights and her value, she helped to give me just so many great things and really helped to own my power of what I've done. And so I am just honored when she said yes, because she is a big deal, a media personality. She has one of the best co-working spaces. And I know you all, as global corporations, you're like, how can we bring the community of those who are remote? Well, our business, this podcast is going to give you the solution today with our next guest. So hello, Regina. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty good on a Monday. Lovely. Thank you for having me.
It could be a Tuesday for some of our people. We have some UK
Tuesday,
people
Wednesday,
in,
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm living, so I'm happy.
Yes, could you just take a moment and be able to share people like what is the us space? How did that vision and that dream come about? Because you are inspiring so many people. I personally have toured this space. It is beautiful. The centralized location. So would love to hear how you got this started. And then we're gonna dive deep into how other people's can go, from going from nonprofits to building their own dynasty like you are.
Oh, dynasty, I accept it. So I guess we can start with the history of me, right? Like my traditional educational background is in higher ed student affairs. So I have an undergrad degree from an HBCU, Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Shout out. And it is in health and physical education. And then I have an emphasis or concentration in adolescent psychology. I chose not to go the teacher route when I found out that standardized testing would be the determinant of if I get to keep my job or raises and all that stuff. And I knew I was coming back to Texas. So I just pivoted. I was already working at Boys and Girls Club, and the CFO at the time, I love Boys and Girls Club. The CFO at the time, he was like, Legina, pick out two places where there's Boys and Girls Clubs. Let's network you into getting a job. And even saying that right now, I understand why networking is so important. So I picked two places. One of them happened to be Austin. So I always tell people I spent my formidable 20s in Austin, living my true millennial best life. But that's how everything got started as far as the conceptualization of the us space. I didn't know what I was building when I was writing things down, like the napkin, if you will. But I literally whiteboarded in the at the time the new library that was in Austin right next to my house. I took some photos of it. I uploaded it to my Google Drive that wasn't a business drive at the time. And after a while, couple of really pivotal events in my life happened, and I finally moved to Houston. And when I moved to Houston, I went into full entrepreneurship mode. I don't recommend that for anybody, but I went into full entrepreneurship mode. And when you fast forward to 2024 now, what I have found out is that the us space is needed, not only for me, not only for other founders, but for people that have small businesses, organizations, people that work remote. And now what I do outside of strategically thinking about how to grow and scale the us space in a sustainable way is, as a founder, my thought leadership is in space revitalization in the future of work, because everybody in some type of way either has I don't love side hustle, but has additional ways to make income,
I
right?
love it. Multiple streams of income. I like
Yeah,
that.
multiple
Okay.
streams.
Okay. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Or if you want to say side hustle respects, or they're working remote in some type of way. And so I really love geeking out and reading about and understanding what the future of work is in the us space. meets that need in so many ways. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And I love your journey and your honesty about like, hey, this may not be the way to do it. It was my way, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was the best way.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And getting to the future of work, remote work is here to stay.
Yeah.
And I remember for me working at Facebook, being remote, my team is in New York, my team is in Seattle. And so I felt lonely, and you're looking for networks within the community that you're in and how to be able to grow and keep yourself busy and away from being layoffs and the Great Recession. That's the she spoke about this like your network. And I think one of the things that I really love about like co-working space that you offer is it's really niche down, and you talk about it that it's like for women. And I think that that's really empowering. I loved your website, how you had a structure about women collaborating and going together. And how has your concepts of like maybe some of your client testimonials of coming to that space and being offered a sense of you belong here, in the time of remote?
Yeah. So with the us space, we don't even consider people clients here. There's members and there's community. And when you're thinking about working, whether it's for yourself or for somebody else, one of the biggest things, one of the best pieces of advice I got when I started my business, and trust me, I took great offense to everything when I started my business. I was like, I know they're not. Why are they telling me this? But one of them was to do customer discovery. And when I did customer discovery, what I found out is that almost everybody I talk to that works from home has some lack of community, lack of visibility, and lack of access. And the us space started,
True, true,
yeah,
true.
yes. And the us space started focusing on women for one reason. And the main reason is because of research. When you look at who opens, starts, maintains, and self-funds businesses at the largest rate in the country, in the world, it's women of color, and it goes back and forth between Black women and Latino women. And so I was like, what's the disconnect? And then I started looking at how flex third spaces, because that's what I call what the us space is. We're not co-working. I think a lot of the fact that as a millennial or as a woman or as a person of color or even as a whatever it is category, people are always telling you what to do. And so I was like, what is co-working? What does that actually mean? And co-working is when you're working with somebody on something. There's a lot of opportunity to co-work in the us space, but we are not co-working. We're flex third spaces because that talks more to the future of work, right? Flex spaces, a third space, an office where a large corporation or a company with 80 people that doesn't want to lease out a $50,000 floor a month can do some type of flexible thing in the us spaces like this, and can still fulfill the needs of their employees, right? Which is super important because it's not only the work, but I believe NPR said this like a month and a half ago, like 70% maybe, y'all quote me, send me emails saying I'm wrong, but I believe NPR said 70% of Fortune 500 CEOs want their employees to come back to the office because
Yes,
of
yes,
what was productive isn't so much productive anymore. It's
yes,
become a
yes.
distraction because not only is it you're working for the company, some people have added their extra streams of
Yeah,
income
there's
each
multiple
and every
sources.
day. Yes. Or they just get distracted and their family knows they're accessible at home. And it's like, hey, can you, are you, will you? And so on top of that, people want to see movement. Like some of the members, they're like, I just need to get this done and I need noise and movement, or I just need the sound of outside, or I just need to hear the ice machine dropping ice, or I just need to see somebody else working to get work done. And so all that comes into play on why the us space exists. It exists for access and accessibility. It exists so that when you walk into the space as a woman, you feel safe, because the door, everything in here is very intentional. Whether it is that you're a person of color, so culturally, there's some really cool things in here that just make you feel like you're at home, so you can be productive and work. Our membership looks like the expanse of Houston's real diversity. So we have a little bit of everything in here. And when we talk about diversity, we don't have to say a thing or put a picture up of somebody that represents what diversity is, because when you're in here, you're like, oh, it's
It
people of
is. It is this.
and
It
even
is this.
generations and
Yes.
even generations.
Wow. I love that. And so I stand corrected. How can you do flex spaces? That's the proper term. Flex spaces. Okay. I love that. She's educating me. And that's what I tell people. Like, podcasts are a really great way to be educated, to turn conversations. There's a lot of people who can get therapy and healing and insights and growth. And so I thank you so much for that. And you touched on a topic that I would love for us to go a bit deeper on, because one of the questions that a lot of people get asked is, how can I move up in my career if I don't have that? If I'm not at the office having the conversations, how can I get connected with people if I am at home and it's just me and things are great because I can get more work done? But then how do I build that sense of community? And I would love to see, like, while you were in your educational space, I know that you partnered with other things, and it's the corporate. I still believe that nonprofit, the educational things. I have a PhD person who's coming. I still consider them corporate. Like, you are helping the world go round. But how did you build that sense of community for those of us who maybe, we could be in these day-to-day places and not even figuring out, like, how do I get this community? I'm different. I have dreads. I have butterflies in my hair, different things. How do I show up in this quote unquote diversity and still build a community of other people who can foster my growth? Like you said, build that sense of community where your space may not be functional, or like in Kansas where I'm from.
That was a loaded question. So I think
Oh
what I'll
yeah,
go with
sorry.
I think what I'll go with on that is there's this ability, and I think it's in the journey of life, right? Like, I don't think it's an age thing. People have different experiences at different times. Closer and the quicker you can get yourself. Doesn't have to mean I love myself 100% of the time. I work on that every day. But I really do believe that the closer you can get to being comfortable with yourself and understanding that your belonging is literally from you being alive, then you can walk in a room with a certain
Can,
amount of
can you
audacity.
repeat that? Can you repeat that just one more time? Your belonging is what? Like, that is so true. Can you say that just one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So the closer that you can get to being comfortable with yourself and understanding that your belonging comes from being alive, it does. It really does. And it's a trained thing. People are always like, "You're so confident." I work on my confidence, and I think that the only thing that I have the right to do is to stand on the backs of my ancestors. And I often talk about in rooms, all rooms, not just rooms of women or people of color, but I could be with a whole bunch of white people, and I say, have the audacity of a white male millennial, and then swag it out the way you would for anybody or anything, for your culture, for your ethnicity, for your age, for your ignorance. Sometimes Ignorance can be absolute bliss. And when you do that, it turns into magic.
That was perfectly answered. I couldn't have even imagined this at all. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And you touched on, like you said, the backs of your ancestors. I say that all the time of how where I was at Facebook and it was only me in my group of 200 people. And I always were like, I come as one, but I stand as 10,000 with Maya Angelou because I always felt that like no
Yeah.
matter what I'm doing, who I am, I know that I can do this because you may only see me, but it's 10,000 people that are cheering me on. People like you who are even coaching into me and pouring into me. That's who I have in me. When you see me, I'm fueling from their energy and their insights to help me to get better. So I
And
think that that is
yeah.
that's so awesome.
I love
Um,
that. And as you say that, that's for me, that's what I visually see of how the us space works, right? Like a lot of us in here are small teams or individuals. We have everything from UX designers that have been designing for 30 years and have multi-million dollar contracts, but they're a team of contracted people. We have people that do corporate trainings. We have a law firm in here. We have individuals that do branding and marketing. We have people that work in the VC and accelerator spaces. We have a little bit of everything. But what's really cool is if you ever need to go into a meeting or you ever have something to do or you have a pitch to pitch, whether it's in the corporate spaces or it's for money, you could literally come in here and get some type of answer or some type of needs fulfillment in here. And I mean, there was even, what was it? It's like 3 or 4 months ago. One of our interns is graduating. It wasn't 3 or 4 months ago. Everything goes by so fast. It's like a month ago. One of our interns is graduating. There was another young lady from an accelerator that had her pitch night coming up. And there was somebody else that was about to do a private meeting for a VC or something. And we had a TV randomly out on the floor, and people just kept plugging into it and doing their pitches. And nobody really stopped working, but they'd be like, change that. That doesn't work. No, that
right.
doesn't make sense. And then sometimes somebody would come over and point things out, or we'd be like, great, you're ready. So there's this beyond sense of community. So going back to what you said at the beginning, everybody needs community, and everybody needs community met the way they need it met. And I think that's one of the really unique things about the us space is whether you are corporate, which I'll warn you, if you're in here and you end up getting a desk or membership here, you may catch the entrepreneur bug. I feel like everybody does. But we also have people that are in corporate and end up contracting a
Yeah,
small business for something. So it just all works out really well.
absolutely. I think that's the piece that that sense of community that is so needed because for us that are in the corporate world, all of us that are the corporate inspirations part of, we always have a need. I remember like I would be planning events and then I would need a caterer or I would need, where are we
Gotcha.
gonna host it? Our team at in or we would maybe need a lawyer for various things. And it's like, oh my gosh, this law firm is like right here. They can help us and we
Yep.
can contract with them. So I think that community is what you call that partnership piece too, where you may find someone that missing link, whether you're in corporate or if you're an entrepreneur, you find that missing link, but it was because you were in the us space. You were in the space where people commune. And it's that gathering that it makes it just so worthwhile for you to list all of those various people from intern all the way up to CEOs and things. That's incredible that we often don't get access to that. Like for one of our companies that I had worked for, the CEO had an open door policy, but the CEO was never there. So we couldn't like connect with them. But you've been, you're working at this flex space and you listen to things like, oh, I didn't even know you did that. We've been talking to each other and walking past each other this whole time. My business actually needs someone like you.
Yeah.
So I just think that what you are doing is really so pivotal. And I
Thank you.
loved your business pitch and how you like helped us to really lean in to what our strengths are. So I think it's not even just the us space, but it's just you. It's your vision, it's your gift that really is what I try to encourage those who are corporate inspirations as they want to grow their career. It's that passion that you
Yeah.
need to have that it really just it's embodied of who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that, you know, the us space is my second business, right? So I have Lorray Infinity, where I do business consulting, and I'm a media personality, like you said earlier. So I'm a talking head quite often. Um, but what it really comes down to is when I am coaching people for pitches or for strategic ops and logistics, it's really about leaning into yourself more, right? Like, I think often enough, like, we are trained and told in some type of passive way to kind of doubt ourselves, or we doubt ourselves from hearing other people. And so learning how to story tell and tell your story is one of those really essential things, even in the corporate world, right? Like, if you're able to tell a captivating story to get your project off the ground, or get your or your proposed budget to be the one that goes to the forefront. And, like I told you, and like I told our group, uh, yeah, shout out. Like I told our group, is like, when you get to the ask, it's not the money or the connection you need, it's what that thing is going to get you, right? So if I ask, I'm like, hey, everybody, the us space is amazing. You should be a member here. And the reason why you should be a member is because, one, the most important thing you can ever do is invest in yourself. Investing in yourself helps you grow your business. But when you're here, you get business education, you get a social aspect, you get coffee, tea, water, wine, and beer, you get safe access, right? Because the doors are remote access. So if you're in here late and
And
it's
I
dark
tried
out,
to get in, y'all. I had to
you
be
couldn't get
escorted. Hey, you got to be escorted in the room.
you got to be escorted in, and low key, and like in a joking but serious way, that's why we say welcome to the table, because every member, every partner of the us space, they get to pick who's at the table. We're not in the place anymore where you have to pull up a seat or make room at a table. We have our own damn table. We have 10,000 square feet of a table. And so when members are in here and they're figuring something out, or they need to do a meeting, or they're having an event, whatever's in here is what we can use for what we need. And so the environments you create around you are super important, as well as when you're pitching anything, leaning into yourself to understand, and investing in yourself is 100%. It applies to everything.
Gosh, yes, that's just I'm blown away. As she was talking, I told her before we got started, I was like, I have a list of questions, but I talked to you before. I just know we gonna go off and it's gonna be so empowering. You'll fuel me, it'll spark another conversation. So I just can't thank you enough. One of the questions though that I do have is what's a quote that you have used to inspire you? Like I shared with you the I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. One of my biggest one lately that I've been really leaning on is the Muhammad Ali is that, even the greatest was once a beginner. Don't be afraid to take that first step. And that is how I've been able to really grow and really learn and shut my mouth so that way I can take a moment to listen. So what would be a quote that, maybe no one else had even heard of and they could be able to use that to inspire and be able to take that as a mantra?
Okay, well, you're asking me off the cuff, so I'm going to go with things that I say that I've come up with, right? One of them being, it's so simple, but people are always like, well, how do you do that? How'd you get in that room? How'd you get that contract? Show up, show up, show up. So I say that a lot in person and speaking engagements. I say that a lot on LinkedIn. I always put, I'm like, show up, show up, show up. And it means show up for
LinkedIn, y'all.
yourself.
Call us LinkedIn.
Like
Y'all
show
need
up
some coworkers
for
face flex
yourself,
space. Call us.
show up for others, show up in a room, show up for your business. You show up. I think that's really important. Um, and then another one, it's the motto of my brand, and it came to me literally. I was like, what is going to be the thing, the tagline, the closing that I use that is impactful and means something? And it's tell your own story, be your own brand, live your truth, and stand in your moment, right? So like, tell your story. You should always be telling your story. And
Mhm.
then being your own brand is a representation of self. No matter who you work for or what you're doing, your brand is your brand. You are who you are. Your fiber is your fiber. Your morality is your morality. So be your own brand. And then, tell your story, be your own brand, live your truth. I think that it's beautiful if you have the audacity, the ability, and the capacity to always live in the truth of who you are. And then a simple one that I think anybody can do all the time, because I understand that everybody doesn't have the privilege or earned privilege, because we could get on a whole nother thing about earned
Right.
privilege. I
Yeah.
am an earned privileged child. And my privilege comes on the understanding that it's earned by my family. But standing in your moment, right? The world goes by so fast. Everything happens in a blink, a blip. And sometimes we turn around and we never just stood in the moment.
Being
And
present.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and and standing in the moment doesn't always have to be an over celebration or an overjoy, but just an ingesting of what's going on, even if it's not the best thing. Like, stand in the moment and take the lesson. And I love the motto because it's something that I always I go back to, because it's a constant reminder, because I forget things very quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it. So show up, show up, show up. She told us first from Legina Harris. That's her quote. And then we need to stand in the moment, live your truth. Like, I love all of that. Thank you so much for inspiring us and providing us with insight. One of our second to final questions is, on our podcast, we ask our previous guest to give our next guest the question. So, this final question that we were asked before we asked you what questions will you have for our next guest is, what's one thing you can do to improve someone else's life?
What's one thing you can do
You
to
can
improve somebody
do
else's
to improve
life?
someone else's life. That was the question to you.
I think that, especially now in times, and I tell people this in business, is the best way to offer what you have is to ask somebody and listen to what they need, right? So I watched this show called New Amsterdam. And
I
it's a
think everybody
hospital
had to do a pause and laugh at that one.
it's a hospital show. And the guy, he takes over a hospital, and he always asks, he goes, how may I help? How can I help you? And I just took that, and I loved it. So I'll be like, how can I help you? Or when somebody looks distressed, I'm like, how can I help you? Or I'm like, tell me about yourself. Like, tell me your story. And I just said it on a panel that I was on earlier today, especially during COVID, but all the time. I take a moment to ask people how they're doing, even if sometimes it'll be in the middle of a meeting and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. How are you doing? Right after the election, I was very pointed in asking some Black women, when I'd see it on their faces, I'd say, how are you doing? Are you okay? Because I think that because everything goes so fast and there's so many things happening, we forget that something is always affecting somebody. And a laugh, a joke, a smile, a hug, they go a long way. And I wouldn't even say I'm the most like affectionate person. I'm very snarky, but I think that that's a powerful tool, just to ask and listen versus offering and telling. And I've done it both ways. I mean, I am who I am, but I try to operate in the thing of asking and listening.
I think for me, at least, as a testimony to that, is you have been like, let's connect. And it's the, oh, we're connected now. I can like follow with you. I can celebrate you, because I'm seeing all these various things. And it's been so empowering and inspiring because everybody who I know, and I try to tell them about you, they're like, I know Legina. Like, oh, I went here and I did this. Like, I was trying to meet her with other people. Like, I did. I connected with her like I knew her. And it's just such a great testimony of like who you are and how you said that. Like, how can I help you? You are very much that. You are so intentional. And I truly, truly celebrate you. I celebrate the us space of them providing a space for us to operate in and feel safe, this flex space. So my final question to you before I ask you about how can people connect with you and learn more about it is what would be your question for our next guest that you would like them to answer?
Yeah, absolutely. For your next guest, I want to know how they're pausing and taking care of their self.
Oh, that's how are you pausing and taking care of yourself? Oh, I need to ask myself that. How are you pausing and taking care of yourself? That is really, really good. So, for those of us who are listening and our audiences who will listen, how are you pausing and taking care of yourself today? Regina, it is such an honor. Thank you for who you have been in my life and our continued future connections and collaboration. Could you please let people know how can they get connected with you? Where can they find you at? Where can they learn more about a space? I have people from the Oxy Company, LinkedIn, Cigna, Google. Who else is coming up on the stage? So many. YouTube.
Yeah.
One of our friends, they work there at YouTube. So how can they who have recruiters and other people who are remote and they want to be able to find it, or just entrepreneurs who might be thinking of going from a W-2 employee to getting that entrepreneur bug and want to learn. So could you be able to share with them how can they get connected with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the Us Space, we have all different types of things that go on here. There have been lifestyle photo shoots. There have been book signings. There have been panels and firesides with chambers of commerce. We've had small corporate trainings for smaller teams that want to do either their group training for their team in a corporation, or they just want to have a small retreat. We've had happy hours. We've had office meetings and office hours and everything. So there's something that you could do at the S Space at any time. You can find me personally on LinkedIn, Legina R. Harris. Easy to find me. And you can find the Us Space at theusspace.com. That's THEUSSPACE.com. And you can follow us on Instagram at _ the Us Space, and you can find us on LinkedIn at the Us Space. So that's the Us Space.
Yes, the us space. I love that. And I love how you spoke about that. There's authors, book publications, photo shoots. It is what you may need it for to build that community. So please connect with Legina Harris or her other side of the business. If you need business coaching because you're like, hey, I need to go from being this entrepreneur to this CEO myself, you can be able to connect with her on LinkedIn. She is truly a powerhouse. As we started this out with, a powerhouse is someone who is dynamic, effective, and she truly has been unstoppable in success. I'm so excited to witness her growth, to celebrate her on. To all of you all who are out there who are corporate inspirations and you're like, I need a community, I need to be involved. This is your way. There is budgets and resources available for you to leverage that. Instead of saying like, hey, I need this computer and things, maybe you inform them that instead of paying the Wi-Fi and things, then you allow them access to pay for you to this flex space where you can get insights in a community and get your ideas heard and share those things, because I have had those days where I'm like, "Ugh, I'm having the Monday blues. My boss is driving me to drink." And you want someone that you can be able to leverage and do things with. So truly check them out, theuspace.com. This will be your best investment that pays dividends for life. I am so honored that you could join us. I know you have a million things that you could be doing, but it was truly an honor to have you on our podcast, The Powerhouses of the Global Corporate Stage. I hope
Thank you so much
everyone,
for having me, lovely. I
yes,
appreciate
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Tune in next time for our next guest, who is an analytics ace turning numbers into knowledge, and share her story on how she got over a $30,000 pay increase without a degree. Thank you all so much for
it.
tuning in. Have a wonderful